pleased to yield 5 minutes to Mr. Steube. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've heard a lot today from witnesses about the Bureau of Prisons. So I do hope that, unfortunately, we don't have a witness from them today. So I do hope the chair is committed to bringing somebody in so we can ask some of these questions on both sides. I think we both have questions that we want answered. We've heard a lot today about Democrats wanting to let folks out of prison in the middle of the biggest crime wave in decades. But they also don't want to let out people who have been charged with misdemeanors who are languishing in prison for January 6th. And I want to read and quote from the district judge, his exact quote, and I quote, "For the reasons stated in open court, it is adjudged that the warden of the DC jail, Wanda Patton, and director of the DC Department of Corrections, Quincy Booth, are in civil contempt of court. U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth of Washington ruled. The clerk of the court is ordered to transmit a copy of this order to the Attorney General of the United States for appropriate inquiry into potential civil rights violations of January 6 defendants as exemplified in this case." Now, we haven't heard from DOJ as to whether they're actually doing that or not. I would love for another opportunity to question AG Garland and the full committee about that. He goes on, "I find that the civil rights of the defendant have been abused," Lamberth said at a hearing. "I don't know if it's because he's a January 6th defendant or not, but I find this matter should be referred to the Attorney General of the United States for a civil rights investigation into whether the DC Department of Corrections is violating the civil rights of January 6th defendants, and this and maybe other cases." I ask unanimous consent, Chair, to enter into the record Fox News article, "Federal Judge Finds DC Jail Warden in Contempt."
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, my questions are for you. Even January 6 suspects who are accused of minor crimes, ones simply charged with trespassing or parading, are the targets of hyperbolic statements and smears by Merrick Garland's propaganda press team. Can you speak to some examples of this? And just recently in Florida, I read of an individual who simply walked into the Capitol, was not violent, didn't commit any other crime than other walking in, gets a year of probation, has to deal with house arrest and all these other things, which if it was reversed, like the Department of Interior, we've heard nothing of those who raided the Department of Interior. Questions I asked AG Garland at the last time he was before the committee. Could you expand on that?
Yes, thank you so much, Representative. So it's important to note that the most often used charge for Capitol protesters is a Class B misdemeanor called parading or picketing in the Capitol building. And that is what most of the defendants, not necessarily the ones in the DC jail, but most of the defendants have been charged with. And again, it's important to remember these people, almost all of them, have no criminal record, but that doesn't stop prosecutors in Joe Biden and Merrick Garland's Justice Department from suggesting that they are domestic terrorists, even if they were let into the building by Capitol Police, as we now have surveillance video that proves that that is the case, went in, thought that they were allowed in, took selfies, some were in for 5-10 minutes, left peacefully. They were not arrested. They were not told they weren't allowed there, and then woke up to FBI raids at their homes. The Justice Department is asking for harsh penalties, sometimes 3 years probation, sometimes home detention. But what's even more, I think, egregious are DC district judges who even go above and beyond what the Justice Department is asking and imprisoning these paraders for 30, 60, 90 days in jail, condemning them as potential terrorists attempting to overthrow democracy that day. All of the hyperbole you see in the press, you also hear in the courtroom. And so that is what they're doing to trespassers who thought they were doing nothing wrong on January 6th.
And some of that video shows that there was officers that were standing there while people entered and were doing nothing about it. The treatment of January 6 suspects has been far different than BLM rioters and others accused of liberal goals through violence, including the Department of Interior that I asked AG Garland about, and he seemed to not even know that that happened blocks from his office. January 6 suspects have been interrogated by the FBI about their political beliefs, such as whether they thought the 2020 election was fair. Can you discuss the role political motivations have played in the treatment of January 6 suspects, both in prison and in terms of prosecution?
So not only are they asked about their political views by investigators, they've been asked what kind of news that they watch, Yes, whether they believe that the 2020 election was stolen, their views on immigration. I've seen in sentencing memos, especially for one man who was sentenced for parading in the Capitol, they retrieved social media posts from his deleted Facebook account that were negative against Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats, and that was used as evidence to try to convince a judge successfully that this particular man should go to jail for 3 months for parading in the Capitol.
My time's expired. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Very pleased to yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Georgia.